Could you share with us a pro bono case that you did that you regard as being memorable to yourself? And also, how has that motivated you, you know?
Yeah. To be honest, I think every case is memorable for its own reasons. But I think one case that particularly comes to mind is the case of PP versus Unani. That was a case involving a chap who incidentally was exactly the same age as I was. And he was charged 20 years after the fact for a very serious drug trafficking offense, where he was essentially a port worker who, on finishing his shift, had given a ride to a colleague who was riding pillion with him. And as they got to the entrance of the port, there was a customs officer who asked to check the bag of the pillion. They opened the bag and discovered a big bag of drugs. The person whose bag was confiscated, absconded, and was not to be found for many, many years, you know. And when they finally found him, he was still high on drugs, and he was walking around under a false identity. Nevertheless, they took his evidence, and he claimed that the bag belonged to my client and that he was just holding on to it for my client. So before you know it, my client got charged. And unfortunately at the time, because they were fairly poor, they couldn't afford a lawyer to defend him in a trial. But when I was introduced to the potential client, I was a bit concerned to discover that his real case is that he didn't commit the offense. And so then we had to struggle with this fact and figure out what we can do to help him, given that he had already pleaded guilty with the benefit of legal advice. Long story cut short, with the assistance of the lawyer who represented him, who confirmed that in fact the client had all along maintained his innocence, and the only reason he had pleaded guilty was because he couldn't afford the cost of claiming trial. The judge just looked at me and said, "We'll clear your schedule in the court. You're going to do this trial." and so that's exactly what happened, you know. So we went to trial, took about 8 days, and we managed to get the client acquitted.
Fantastic.
You know? So that was a momentous thing for me, even as a younger lawyer, you know, with just hard work and some amount of thinking, you can make a difference, right?
Excellent. That's probably a nice feather in the cap. So how has that case, and you recall it with, you know, some degree of, vivid description. So it's obviously stayed quite a bit in your mind. How has that motivated you?
You know, one of the nicest things that happened after that case was having the client and his mother take me and my colleagues out for dinner at Newton Hawker Centre, and it was one of the most memorable meals that I've ever had, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in a lot of these cases, it's the impact.
Yes.
You know, and in a lot of these cases, particularly crime cases, it's not just a question of dollars and cents. It's about life. It's about liberty.
Yes, it's probably worth its weight in gold, and I'm sure that meal is probably one of your cherished memories of a lifetime. You're a pro bono champion, Abe, and really that case that you described, is such an exemplar of the fine work that you do. If you could give a word of encouragement to the legal profession on continuing to do pro bono or starting to do pro bono, and you could give that word or rather more than word, just words in say 2 to 3 sentences, what would you say?
You know, one of the things that I discovered serendipitously, right, in doing these kind of cases is that if you make time to do good, there will always be time for everything else, you know. So if you just prioritized something like this, even when it seems like you don't have the time or you don't have the ability or the experience or the exposure, but if you just say, look, I really want to try and do this and help someone out. I don't know how I'm going to manage with my very hectic schedule and all of the rest of it. But if you just make that commitment, I've on numerous occasions experienced this almost time expanding experience, that if you prioritize doing good, somehow everything else will fall into place.
And I think your words of wisdom, which is prioritizing doing good, which is interestingly enough the English translation of pro bono, right? Doing good, pro bono publico, doing public good. And so on that note, maybe we can ask you what's your secret of time management. So getting real practical here, with all the juggling that you need to do as a top lawyer and as managing partner of your firm, and all the other things that come with the turf, how do you manage time? Any tips and tricks to share with the profession?
It's, for me, a lot of it's got to do with the personal conviction and motivation, right? But 3-4 years ago, we had been approached by this firm, Virginia Queck and Lalita, two very senior partners of a small practice, who had taken on a medical negligence case, and they were suing a hospital and a very senior neurosurgeon on behalf of a lady who had become permanently vegetative, following a brain tumor operation, which was successful, but complications arose in the post-operative phase. And it was a hugely complicated case. If I could just add, sense of community is also important. That I do feel sometimes when lawyers give up on the profession, it's because they're somehow disconnected and disengaged.
Yes.
Right? So I think trying to build a sense of community is an essential part of being in a profession, being part of this fraternity. And frankly, I think this is the reason why a lot of the more senior people are still in the profession, right?
Yes, yes. That sense of community, the sense of collegiacy, the brotherhood, the sisterhood in the law, and your reference to the ring of support sounds like the fellowship of the ring. Somehow it just connects us all in a mysterious, almost mystical way, but it's powerful. Yeah. And it's true that I think this is part of the glue as well that keeps us connected. Basically, we have, of course, the indigents who are unable to pay legal fees, and you've shared quite a bit about that in terms of the cases you've undertaken, criminal legal aid cases. What about those who fall through the cracks? As in, they may not necessarily be without means, but they could be underserved or limited means. What more do you think that we can do to help that group of people?
So one of the things I think we can consider doing is a gradation of services, right? So even if someone may not qualify for representation for a full trial, there's still a lot of value add that can be given, even if we think in terms of giving preliminary advice, giving them some sense of direction, where to go, what to do. It's important for people to be prepared to break the mold and to start from first principles and ask themselves, what sort of practice do I want to build? And to avoid looking at how things have been done so far, rather than think about, well, how can I do this differently? And, come up with a way that works for me, And the fact of the matter is, I think a lot of us can afford to at least try it out, and I would encourage especially the younger lawyers, because personally my own experience has been technology is the great leveler.
Yes.
And there's so much that people can do in small firms that can match what the large firms are able to do. And so people need to think a little bit more creatively with the technology that we have, how you can serve communities without the cost structures that law firms are traditionally used to working with, And I think this is one way that the sandwich class that you're referring to can be better served.
Thank you very much, Abe, for a very profound, thoughtful, far-sighted, and inspirational sharing for all of us. I've been encouraged by your example and by your words, and knowing you as well, that these are not rhetoric. This is the reality of how you practice, and so thank you for actually walking the talk, and for actually being very sincere in the things that you shared, which, knowing you, everything you've said matches up to the real McCoy. Congratulations, Abe.
Thank you.
We're very proud of you. And Law Society and Law Society Pro Bono Services is proud to present to you the Pro Bono Ambassador Award 2021 to a deserving ambassador.
Thank you.